Hey guys, Paul here, and welcome to another episode of In Your Mind. Today we sat down with Natalie Susi, a UCSD professor teaching the pursuit of happiness. Can you believe that? They're teaching that in college now? Anyways, she goes deep so quick. We learned so much about her, and she really gives us some authentic, true life skills that we can use and apply today, especially with everything that's going on. I cannot wait for you to see it, so have some fun and check it out. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to In Your Mind. We are here with Natalie Susi,
Hi, everybody.
yeah,
Sorry.
UCSD professor of the pursuit of happiness, yeah?
Yep,
I love
absolutely.
that. I want all the happiness I can find.
Thank you guys for having me. I am so excited to be here. I can't wait to chat with you. And yeah, thank you. I'm in gratitude.
Thank you. Well, I like to start the same place with everybody, and I want to know about Susie as a little girl.
Oh, wow. No one's done this before on a
Yeah.
call. I love it. Right there. Okay, Susie is a little girl. So how deep should we go here? Basically, I'm a teacher by trade and by heart. And I tell you, open with that because I'm an only child. I was super close with my mom. We were kind of doing it on our own until I was about 8. My dad was a good man, but he was not around. He was not present. So my mom and I were kind of on our own. And I used to play school in my bedroom from when I was like 5 years old with invisible students. And so that was really me as a child. My favorite gift I got at 6 years old, and it was a real blackboard. It was like one that you actually put on the
Wow.
wall. And that came to me with a big bow on it from my mom, and it's still to this day my favorite gift because it made me feel like a real teacher. And we met my dad, who is my dad for all intents and purposes, when I was 7. And that started a different journey. And very blessed. I have really beautiful parents and a lovely, memories of all my upbringing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
what led you into where we are today?
Yeah, so as I said, I'm a teacher by trade, I'm a teacher by heart. As cliche as that sounds, it's what I'm here to do on the planet. It's what I love to do. And I also always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to understand what it was like to run your own life. I don't like having a boss. I don't use that word in my world. I don't like anybody telling me what to do, really, unless I really trust they know what they're talking about. So, I always say I wouldn't wake up for anybody at 6 a.m. except for my students or my own child. So it launched itself. It was a good, framework for not ever wanting to be in a real life 9 to 5 job. And so I was teaching at San Diego State. I got laid off in the budget cuts. I was drinking a margarita. I decided I could do it better, totally randomly. I was optimistically naive. I had no idea what it was to start a business. And I started a business called Bear Mixers. And that was the journey of where like entrepreneur world started. It was an organic cocktail mixer, and it came out the same year that Skinny Girl came out, Skinny Girl Margarita.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, so I struggled with that business. Wore all the hats for all the years. I had no money. I worked 3 jobs, and I tell that whole story because in this, for the sake of the framework of this conversation, those experiences, those 8 years of working 3 jobs with no money and trying to build a business in an industry I knew nothing about, it was super male dominated, and in the process of all of that, losing a boyfriend who I was like madly in love with, who I wanted to marry, launched me into spiritual growth, launched me into like where we are right
Yeah.
now, where we're talking about like, well, how did you get here, and why do you care about what you do, and why are you obsessed with the content that you teach? And pursuit of happiness is because of the challenges and the, what I call ditch moments, really challenging moments in my life that led me to learn all this stuff.
And how far back was that business and going through that to then now we're in pursuit of happiness?
Yeah, so I'm 36 now. I started my first business at 23 when I was in grad school at San Diego State. Um, the business was sold when I was 31, so I was in it for about 8
Amazing.
years. I sold it to a leading health foods company in LA.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. It was a crazy long road, and I could not have done it without my mentors. Like my mentors got me through all of that, Max and Cheryl. And yeah, and so now we're here. So when I sold that company, I woke up one day and realized like I really want to be back in the classroom, and I want to be teaching content this time around that isn't English literature. I want to teach stuff that actually matters. And I did a lot of studying around personal development, spiritual growth. I read a ton of books and I went to a bunch of seminars and I did a bunch of free coaching sessions at that time in the space of dating. So I was a date coach for a little while. And the journey as a single woman in my 30s, like I've spent, half of my 30s single and half of my 30s in relationships.
Mm.
All three of those breakups have looked very different. I've learned major life lessons in each of those breakups, and got depressed and challenged and struggled with all the stuff that causes me to be able to teach the pursuit of happiness, because we teach what we need to learn.
Yes.
So people think, oh, you teach the pursuit of happiness, you're happy all the time. That's just not accurate. I struggle with anxiety and depression a lot, and
Yeah.
I've had to use all the tools I teach for myself first.
Did you have the struggles when you were a child, or you developed them later?
Yeah, so it's a great, beautiful conversation. I never get to have
I know.
conversations like this.
Everyone comes in, I'm like,
It's
"What are you doing? This is like therapy."
yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's usually the entrepreneur stuff that I talk about. So, which is also awesome too, but this is just beautiful in a different way. So I started taking, when I was 16, I went through a typical high school depression, right? It's probably even too strong of a word for it now. It was like, I was just in high school. I was just being a teenager with emotions and hormones and being a woman and all these things. But I was feeling very sad. I didn't quite know why at that time. I can look at it now and see it differently. And they put me on medicine, put me on anti-anxiety meds.
Yeah.
I was on Paxil. And I was on Paxil for 16 years.
Wow.
No, sorry, till I was 30. So it would have been, whatever the math is on that, 13
Awesome
to
that you
30.
guys.
So the 16 to 30. Yeah, and that was a huge journey because it's some of the things I talk about on occasion. The pursuit of happiness is being happy is much easier on drugs. On anxiety drugs, let me be honest. Let me be clear with that. Because anxiety drugs are sort of like the thought comes through, and if you're on the right med, you can look at that thought and put it down and be like, I'm not going to mess with that. You can actually do that, is my experience of it, right? But when I was on Paxil and then I was on Lexapro, I tried a bunch of things. I could do that. When you don't have that as a backup, you have to work through spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. You have to put your process in place for happiness. You have to actively do stuff for it every single day.
Mm.
It's much harder to live life without taking a pill,
Yeah.
but it's way worth it. It's way worth all the trouble, because when you're on those meds, I didn't learn how to process emotions. I didn't learn how to communicate.
Yeah.
So many things lost in taking those meds. So
And now that you're doing this pursuit of happiness, right? And I love your journey already, like that's what led you here and you're using that. I also love that you say that we do, right, what we also need. Like no one
totally.
ever says that, and that's the truth.
Mm.
Have you seen just in your career then a shift or a difference that, like when you were younger, right? It's like, oh yeah, I was just in high school. And they put you on these meds. But now I'm like thinking of like my niece who's in high school and is
Mhm.
getting terrorized because of the internet. Like, have you seen
Mhm.
this like sort of shift of like more people feel the need for this? It's like sadness
Feel
or
the need for meds, or
meds,
feel
or
the
even just
need
saying
to.
more people want that happiness because they don't feel like they actually have it.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I mean, it's a great question. I think that we're moving into a time where we're moving into this generation where, and I try to look at this from what I call like the light version, like the bright side of things as much as I can. And we're moving into a space. I teach incredible students. They're 18 years old, 20 years old. I've mentored students that are now, a little bit older than that over the last 10 years. And they want to do what they want to do. Okay. And some generations look at this generation and they go, oh, they just want to be on a screen. They just want to be on social media. They just want to do their TikTok. Yes. And not, but yes. And they also have this elevated vision of like what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do for their own well-being.
Yeah.
And they're not willing to, like, I come from an immigrant family, right? My dad is right off the boat. He's from Italy. My mom is first generation. And so that generation and I say this with the most respect I can possibly say, is like, they were more inclined to kind of just do what they were told in some ways,
Yeah.
right? Because they were new to the country and they knew they had a different set of circumstances as far as survival goes, and they had to make a certain amount of money and do a certain amount of jobs to get through, right? It's not the same for this generation. So they do want to be happier, and they think they deserve to be happier in some ways, which I think is awesome. Like, I love that about this generation.
Yeah. I love that the university is. I went to a private university for a little while, and then an art institute and tons of places because I could never stick to one thing. But never in any of the schools were they teaching like the pursuit of happiness or anything on that sort of level.
I have to say, I give UCSD so much credit because the college that I teach at is called Warren College, and the motto of that college is called Life in Balance. And they're just woke. Like, at least sorry guys about that. The college that I teach at, like, my directors, the other teachers that I teach with, like, I'll never forget at our first meeting, like just recently for the new school year, we all went around and told our zodiac signs, which I thought was so funny, because I'm just like, how beautiful to be like working with a group of 25 people and they actually think that this piece of information as we go around and share about ourselves is like relevant and awesome.
I love it.
So there's like a little bit of spirituality in that, and so it doesn't surprise me at all that we teach a more of a conscious content there, you know.
Yeah. Do you go into the idea of like mindfulness?
We do. We talk about mindfulness, and we used to teach positive psychology. Like, we had a couple of articles around positive psychology. I show a lot of TED Talks in the class. One of the things that we talk about the most, and this is regarding of the theme changing, right? So if it's pursuit of happiness, we've also done climate change as one of our themes. But the foundation is communication, right? It's a writing and rhetoric class. So I teach, like, how do you create conscious communication and authentic, genuine win-win situations in all of your communication situations. So we talk about how to consciously communicate and come from a place of love instead of fear. And we also talk about how to break through your fears. And writing, for a writing class, that's so connected to life, right? Because in writing, you have to sit at the blank screen. You have to be willing to do the work, even though you don't want to do it. You have to keep going at it for different versions. You have to ask for peer feedback. You have to ask for teacher feedback. It's a lot like life. Like, those skills are what we do in life.
But it's okay.
So I love teaching writing for that reason.
And I just think, like, that whole process too, I never thought of it before, but you're forcing them to sit in that emotion, which is usually what we're employed to do, right? Like, so it has to be therapeutic and it has to be healing.
Yeah, we talk to them about how to break through the fears a lot, and resistance, and the War of Art, like that book, The War of Art. If you haven't read it, I like highly recommend. I'm sure you've heard of it or read it. And that's all about beating through the resistance, right? So, and that's all that life is. It's just every day, like, oh, let me notice the resistance. How do I keep moving through
this? For
the
people that don't know, what is conscious communication?
So conscious communication is when you create a space for authentic, genuine, win-win connection for everyone. Okay. So I have a 6-step process that I take people through in order to do that. And it's with this idea that we are all walking, talking pieces of a rhetoric. And what I mean by that is, rhetoric in its most simplistic form, it's the art of persuasion. That's it. So it's the message that you're sending in the way you dress, the way you walk, the way you talk, what you're doing with your eye contact, your hands. you're always sending a message to the universe, to everybody around you 24/7 in every communication situation you're in. You're sending a message about who you are, what you believe in, and what you want them to know.
Yeah.
So how do we do that from a love-based, heart-centered place where you're in the flow and your thoughts and your speech and your feelings are all in alignment so that you get the best result and you create the best result for the person who you're communicating with so that they want to keep communicating with you.
That's amazing. Do you do that with businesses then too? You teach them that kind of communication?
That is the content. Like, so when I talk about happiness, be happy. A huge part of being happy is the relationship that we have with people, right? Is our relationships. The next cycle, the next level down from that is relationships all start and end with communication.
Yeah.
So if you can teach how to communicate in a conscious way, you can clean up your relationships and that's cause you to be happier. So that's what I teach everywhere. That's the content I teach with students, with one-on-one clients, and with corporate.
And I'm assuming you learned this when?
So the base of rhetoric came to me at San Diego State. I took a rhetoric and I had to take a rhetoric and writing class, 15 years ago at San Diego State. I was so pissed about it because no one would explain what rhetoric was in a simple way until I had a teacher named Michael Underwood. He was the first teacher that taught me rhetoric the way I teach it, like simple, super clear, super simple. It's just the art of persuasion. That's it. And so I've been teaching the content. As soon as I got it, I was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching it now for 15 years. And I am obsessed with teaching people how to communicate in the most efficient and effective way from the most genuine and authentic place. Because think about every crappy moment you've had in your life, and you could probably root it back to somewhere in that situation. It was communication getting wonky as part of the reason it got bad.
Always.
Right?
Yeah.
I think about it. Every breakup, every fight, every moment where you really felt like crap about yourself, it was because you were communicating with yourself in a crappy way, or you were communicating with someone else in a crappy way.
For sure.
It fixes so much when you can get it.
This is honestly just a personal question now. This is just, I'm curious because you know this art form that is communicating in a really high level way, really, that most people don't. Does that cause you issues then with people that you are close with or significant others, right? Because I just always feel like when you're good at something, and it's not good if the other person's not good at it too.
It's such a perfect question that you ask. It's so poignant to ask in this moment of time, that question. So we teach what we need to learn. Richard Bach says that. I use that quote all the time. We teach what we need to learn. So I am obsessed with learning this content because I struggled with it myself. And because I dated a guy, it all goes back to personal breakups and business breakups for me. Everything fuels out of that. Yeah. I dated a guy who cut off communication from my perspective. I look back on it now, it really wasn't that dramatic, but in the moment it felt dramatic. And he was challenged with communication, and I was so pained by it because I couldn't explain myself. I couldn't hear what he had to say. I couldn't clean it up. I couldn't fix it. There were so many triggers that got lit up because he cut off communication in the way that I was used to communicating with him, which in male-female dynamics, like women didn't survive if you didn't communicate with them as cave women. So when you cut off communication, that's when a man says that phrase, oh, she went crazy. When men say to me, she went crazy, I go, stop. At what point did you cut off communication before she went crazy? Because in 97% of the time, that's what happened.
Oh my God.
So it came out of my obsession with it. I mean, my fascination started 15 years ago. My obsession with teaching this stuff came at about 7 years ago. So to answer your question, sorry, the people I'm in communication with tend to communicate the way that I do. And if they don't, I lovingly express like kind of how that rolls with me. And I say, this is kind of how I do it. And I'm totally cool if it's too much for you, if it's too deep for you, if it's too uncomfortable for you. I totally respect you. I love you. I send you love. But I'm not going to be able to like be in some big intimate thing with you. It just isn't going to work.
You have to teach the people in your life like to communicate this way when you first came up with this obsession.
Yes, but generally, you know what? We talk about energy and stuff. When you start to get into the energy of this kind of stuff, you start to attract people that do this stuff too, you know?
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
So if I run into somebody that can't sort of do that, and I really try to come from a non-judgmental place as much as I can. I do not judge people that can't, because it takes a lot. It's taken me years and years and tons of growth exercises to do it. You just have to wish them well, you know, and know that there's a certain boundary there. And that's okay. It's okay. Like that's kind of how it sounds in my head.
I love that.
Yeah.
I also I'm obsessed with learning about people. Really, I'm obsessed with learning about like this human experience that we're all going through and finding the similarities and how do you like solve these questions and issues that we find ourselves in, because
Mm,
everyone has this technique, right?
totally.
And I'm obviously more gravitated towards this approach of like, I first of all, communication to me is the number one thing. So to
Yeah.
even I've learned a little bit about conscious communication, but never delved into it.
Mhm.
And I'm literally all I can think about right now is like all the stuff I can't wait to look up when we're done talking, because this is amazing stuff. But yeah, I love that you work somewhere that actually is letting you teach this to
I
people, because
know.
it's
I
the type of
know.
skills that everyone needs and no one gets.
It's right. This is why I love it so much too. I'm like, God, this stuff, if I am so passionate about teaching this to 18-year-olds, because they'll message me and they'll say like, I did step 3, you know, and it resulted in this way. And so like I can share, if you guys want me to share the 6 steps with you, I can do it really fast and just give you
Feel
the
free.
overarching,
I'm good.
if that works.
Yes.
So there's a 6-step process, and the first 3 steps is where you assess. The last 3 steps is where you decide.
Okay.
So first step is just asking yourself the question, what in the inside of this communication situation, which is anything, texting, calling, in person, Facebook, every experience that you're in a communication situation, you want to stop and ask yourself, what's my message, mission, or goal here? What's my goal here? What's my message? What's my mission? Then step 2 is you assess what's their mission, what's their message, what's their goal, what is their goal in this communication situation with me. Then number 3, you say, what's our context? What's the context of this situation? Is it business? Is it corporate? Is it entrepreneur? Is it a girl's night out that we're trying to plan? Is it a guy's night out? You know, what is the context that we're dealing with right now? So you say, what's my message? What's their message? What's the context? Okay. Then you can start to make decisions. Step 4, what's the best communication channel to get my message across? So if I know I want a result right now, I want an answer right now, do I need to communicate with them through an area that has a read receipt? Do I want it to be a Facebook message so I know they've read it? Does it need to be WhatsApp? Can it be a text? And, right? Just figure out what's the best channel to get both of those needs, your message and their message, taken care of. Step 5 is what's the tone? So what's the tone? Am I being funny? Am I being light? Am I being academic? Am I being corporate? Am I being businessy? So what's my tone? And then what's my strategy? Step 6 is what's my strategy? So is it coming from a heart-centered place or a head-centered place? Am I talking about logic and facts and stats? Or this is what I'm feeling. Here's a story to share with you. Here's a cute photo to get the result that you're looking for. The most important thing to understand in these 6 steps is that you're coming from a place of love, authenticity. You're trying to be genuine and create a win-win for everybody. If you're only in it for yourself, or you're like, I need to be right here, I need to be heard, and it's got that kind of wonky, like energy behind it, you're coming from a place of fear. You don't want to actually act from that place. I know it's really hard. I've spent many times acting from that place and then regretting it. So you want to get centered from a place of love. Actually stand on both feet, feel into your heart, take a deep breath, and say, I commit to coming from the best of intentions here. And that's how you'll get the best result you're looking for. So that's it.
I love that.
And that's just a combination of all the stuff I've studied for 15 years in rhetoric. I mean, you could look up rhetoric and you'll see some of the terms I just use. It's not like it's some big unique thing. I've just put it in a 6-step process that any student can hold and use. Any person.
Can you use this idea of conscious communication to communicate with yourself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For sure. Yeah, I mean, that's the most important spot to communicate in, right? And find and I love that you asked that question, by the way. No one ever asks that question. That's brilliant. Yeah, good for your listeners. Like they're getting all the stuff they need from you.
I'm just really curious.
Absolutely. You can take that step. You can take those 6 steps with yourself for sure and be kinder to yourself because, the more self-love you give, I know that term it used to piss me off when people would say this, be more loving to yourself and yell blah blah blah. And it's like sounds like that kind of that cliche, but it is true.
Mhm.
Like speaking to yourself with love first really does change everything.
Yeah, you're talking about it. First of all, I love it. Anything where I get to analyze something, I'm going to do. So
Hmm.
that whole first process, those first 3 steps are already my favorite. And yeah, I right away started thinking about how you can do this with yourself because I think that's what we always forget, right? We're
Sure.
learning all these strategies of like how to do business with people, how to strategize, how to negotiate, how to
Mm.
communicate, not consciously, but just in general. But then we always forget like it starts with that person. Like you're
Yeah.
successful because of who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, the skills are there, but you also have you, and no one else has that. And we forget, like, I just always think, like, we always are forgetting us, like, who we are. And
Yeah.
yeah, I love figuring out the way then how we can use that on ourselves.
I think that's beautiful. And I would say too, like just to add off of that, you can absolutely use those 6 steps with yourself. You can also to get into the space where you can speak to yourself from the most loving, genuine, authentic place is through I just in my experience, but there's a reason why all the gurus and all the lands over thousands of years start with meditation. Like
Um,
you can read all the things about happiness. I've read the books and the articles, all the things that I've been teaching for the last 5 years. And it all starts with meditation. Like they all say the same thing. So we got to look at that. Meditation is important because it aligns your thoughts, your speaking, and your feelings, right? And sometimes I'll imagine, like, if I'm doing kind of the exercise you're talking about, talking to myself, I will sit, I'll breathe into my heart, and I'll imagine like a white light that's coming through and connecting. Like, what am I thinking right now? What am I saying right now? What am I feeling right now? So that it's all in alignment
yeah.
and it's all synchronistic. And you can work from that place, speak to yourself from that place, and everything kind of, there's a ripple effect of that.
Knowing that you've gone through anxiety yourself,
Mhm.
and I know everyone's experience is a little bit different. Mine is very like in my head. Like I was anxious since I was a child. Like mine came out
Mhm.
as I would throw up all the time, like every day.
Oh. Mm.
And I luckily tamed that the older I got. But the mind stuff never went away, right? Like I'm still always in my head thinking and processing and going through things. And you're right, like I do know the key to this is
Sure.
meditation. Everyone I've ever studied, talked to, it's always meditation. And
Mhm.
that's also, of course, the one thing that I always struggle the most with.
Yeah.
Because that one time you have to be quiet, really.
Yeah.
And when you're anxious, your mind never wants to be. Or that's the scariest time to be with your mind,
Absolutely.
right? Like when everything's quiet. So I don't know if like you've
Of
experienced
course.
this or you help with it. How do you get through that? Like how do you quiet
Yeah, it's a great question. So I felt the same way. I said the same things. The thing that caused me to start meditating was because my whole life fell apart and I didn't have a choice. Like, so when I turned 30, my boyfriend and I broke up. I had just stopped taking Lexapro for the first time in, however, 12 years. We broke up 6 months later. All 3 of the jobs I was doing to keep my head above water fell apart and my business was failing. And I was literally just brought to my knees. And I somehow, by the grace of God, like I recognized that the universe was sending me a message,
that?
because everything fell apart at the same time and it was just awful. And one of my mentors, Stephen, had given me thousands of dollars worth of access to this personal development stuff that I could have never afforded to purchase at the time. And one of them was an abundance meditation. And it was a guided meditation. And I did that meditation for like 4 or 5 times a day because I had went from working 24/7 to having nothing to do. And I would just sit on my bed and do this meditation. And sometimes I'd fall asleep. Sometimes I'd be awake. I just
Yeah.
had nothing else to do. And my business sold against all odds 6 months later. So I recognized in that moment that there really was something to this meditation stuff. And then I forgot about it again, even though I knew all that. I still forgot about it. And then 3 years later, I picked it back up again. And that is when I really started. So I've been meditating about every day. There's, for the last 4 years. And so I would say that it's okay that you feel the way you feel. Like, let it be okay that you can't shut your brain off, and that you don't really want to do it, and you should or woulda, coulda, but you don't really do it, blah blah blah. Like, who cares? Everybody deals with that with meditation. And I would suggest for you, I'd recommend a guided meditation that you could even just fall asleep to. So you could literally put it on when you're going to bed at night.
Yeah.
Just let it play as you go to bed.
I talked about this like once on the show. Like, I see a psychic now since I moved to San Diego.
Good, perfect.
And she literally just told me that like 2 days ago to start using her guided meditation to go to bed.
So when you hear messages, like we're going down the spiritual track a little bit, when I hear messages 2 or 3 times in a short period of time, it is universe. It's something I'm supposed to pay attention to. So if you've heard it again, you might want to consider, maybe that's the same for you too. But I fall asleep to my meditation. I don't sit and meditate and like go like this, like you think, and it's quiet. No, it's a guided meditation. Right now I'm interested in the Deepak abundance one. I love Deepak. And I fall asleep to it half the time, but I still count it as meditation. I still made the effort to go and put it on, listen to it,
With writing, do you see that as a form of, or similar, I guess, results with it?
When you're trying to write?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Because if you do, like, what I would recommend too is studying maybe just a little bit of the science behind it. Because when you can get behind the science of doing something, you actually know how it's affecting your body and your brain waves. Yeah. Sometimes it forces you to do it because you're like, okay, I can really buy into this even more now. Joe Dispenza, have you ever listened to any of Joe Dispenza's work? Yeah. So then he's an incredible. I went to his seminar, 7-day seminar in September, and he really teaches the science behind spirituality, how it slows the brain waves down, how it connects the heart and the mind, how it makes your biofield coherent. So the more tapped in you are with meditation, I'm sure your person tells you this too, the quicker the messages are, right? You get more messages, you're more in touch with your intuition, you make more money, like all that stuff has a ripple effect that helps us, mind, body, spirit, that helps us in the physical sense.
Yeah, with this side of spirituality, and really sort of this, even it's more to me even like a holistic side, right? Like it's a different side that we're used to, I feel like. Did you have that growing up, or was that something you learned later?
No. So my mom is a walking, talking piece of personal development, and she's never taken a class.
Okay.
She's the most incredible human. My mom and dad are incredible humans. My dad is a little more like me. Like, he and I will overanalyze something. We'll turn it over. We'll see things from different perspectives. And there's a beauty in that. There's a lot of brilliance in doing that. She is more like, I'm gonna live in the moment. It is what it is. It's all good. So she kind of balances the two of us out. We're very close. I'm an only child. I'm super close to my parents. So no, the answer is that no, we didn't meditate. There was none of this kind of conversation. I come from a super old school Italian family, and everything could be fixed with pasta. Like, that's what it was. We did grow up Catholic, and the Catholic churches and schools that I went to, CCD, I was a Catholic school teacher. Like, I did CCD, and I taught the 8-year-olds sometimes because I just wanted to teach. And I will say was like woke Catholic school. Okay. Like, they were really loving. One of our priests was gay. Like, it was very open and loving, and everybody was cool. No judgment. It wasn't like what you kind of see in the movies or the negative stuff you think about Catholicism.
I went to a Catholic high school and college for a little bit, and same by like the Jesuit priest. So, or brothers, not the priest. So I think we got like more chill version of Catholicism, right? Because they were and they were just like that. Like, everybody's accepted, and it was
I love that
very much whole. So I like that side of it. I grew up. My mom is Mexican. My dad's white. And my grandma, I really mostly knew my mom's side because they all lived around or with us. And my grandma, there's a word for it, I can't even think of it off the top of my head, in Mexico. It's sort of like a shaman-ish type thing. They do things like that. My grandma was like that. So, like, they have a thing called, you might have heard of it. I know a good friend of mine's Italian, and they do it too. It's called ojo. but it's like
Mm.
evil eye or like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so there's a lot of stuff like that where
The Maloik, we call
like, yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Something like this.
yeah, like
Yeah.
she would crack an egg on her head and then you bury it and like all this weird looking stuff to other people.
Sure.
Like
Hmm.
I maybe that opened me a little bit because I
Oh yeah.
it, the minute I grasped onto this, and my very good friend and also sort of mentor, her name's Cheryl as well.
Hmm.
She's connected me to the energy healer that I saw for years and years and years.
Wow.
And yeah, it changed everything. Like I know that's a really woo woo for a lot of people, but it
Sure.
did change everything in my life.
Changes everything for me too. What I always say to people, and I'd love to hear a little bit more of this journey, and you could tell me when you need to stop. But um,
Like,
what I always say that the psychology, like I've done therapy my whole life, but my energy stuff, all the spiritual stuff I have done has by far outweighed any of that therapy
anything
stuff.
I've done.
No disrespect to therapists, like
Yeah.
I'm super grateful for them, but the spiritual stuff was the game changer stuff, really.
Nothing has ever affected me, changed me, made me feel honestly better. That whether it was medicine or doctors or therapy or anything, than working with that energy worker. Like I experienced things I never thought I would ever.
Like what? Or what is the what
Just
if you could say one thing around it, what
I
is
think
it for
for
you?
me, like being in awareness, I think was an issue for me. Like really being self-aware
Mhm.
of your past and where you're coming from and the things that happened. Because we tell, the story we tell in our head is not necessarily always true, right? And
Mhm.
I think a lot of times when bad things happen to you, you twist the story or hide the story or do something to it to cope with it. And so
Mhm.
you believe that over time.
Yeah,
And
of course, yeah.
that, a lot of therapy is like, let's go back to your history. Let's talk about your parents. What did they do to you? Right? Like all of these things.
Mhm.
And in the energy sessions, it was so much more about you and
Mhm.
like working with your energy and really finding inside of you that inner child and what they went through and like
Yeah.
everything. And
Yeah.
that was the first time I ever felt like, oh, this is self-aware. The way that I've said that this part of my life happened,
Mhm.
I actually
Mhm.
didn't. I just covered some stuff so that I could feel better about it and move on. Like,
That's great.
yeah, I never experienced anything like that in therapy, and she really made me see it. And like the first visit I saw with her,
Wow.
I hadn't cried for, I mean, this is embarrassing, like 10 years, like to the point where I actually had to get like a duct scooped out because it was clogged. Like I just was
No
not, I was
kidding.
not crying.
Wow.
Just felt like in pain. Whenever I got sad, I immediately went to anger because it was a
Oh,
lot easier to deal
sure.
with.
Of course.
Um, and so I never cried. And then I went and saw her. And I mean, I just literally
Wow.
in like 30 minutes. And I just, yeah, every time I was with her too, like something, not that I was crying every time I was with her, but something
Sure.
really deep always happened where I felt more connected to who I was or who I should be.
That's amazing. That is so beautiful. I think too, there's just to take that to one more level is there's a book called The Journey of Souls. Have you read that book?
No.
So The Journey of Souls is another one of those game changers. And the idea in the book in a very simplistic way is it's the journey between lifetimes. So it's, you have to kind of believe in this idea that you live many lives, which of course I do. And that we have a soul journey and certain soul lessons. And that this is how I came to kind of like what you're saying, this inner child stuff where you're like, I'm going to heal me and I'm going to heal me so much that it'll heal those relationships that were wonky and challenging as well. And inside of this book, it basically says that, we have this soul journey and the soul path and these certain soul lessons. And these people we agreed to have communication with and connection with in order to teach us these lessons. Some of them taught us these lessons in a beautiful way.
Yep.
Some of them taught us these lessons in a really hard and all so many kind of way. They all played the same role of teaching us this lesson for our soul journey. And when you believe that and you buy into it, you can go, it's cool that my dad did this. It's actually okay that this person did this. It's cool that this ex-boyfriend did this. I've accepted it. And I'm actually grateful for it. I'm not some victim anymore. I'm the hero now. I'm actually the hero of this story. And it's so like such a huge relief when you can do that, but it
No,
feels
that's
impossible
amazing.
when
I
you're
love
still
that.
in it, you know?
I'm luckily this is recorded because now I can just go get that book.
Totally, yeah. Highly recommend
Okay.
it. My dad is reading this book
Oh, is
right
he?
now.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love that. Okay,
yeah,
well, I obviously could literally go on and on about this with you, but I do have
totally.
one question I always like to ask.
Okay.
And it is, what if you could meet with your younger self, whether that's the
Mm.
18-year-old, the 12-year-old, whatever it is for you, what would you want to tell them?
I would wanna tell this is a question that could make you cry, right? But I don't need to in the moment because 'cause I've healed a lot of it, but it's a beautiful question. I really honor you for asking it. I would tell my 7-year-old self that, that my real dad, who I have a good relationship with now, at the time when he left, um, that he was just doing the best he could with what he had, and that he didn't want to do that, and that that was actually a love-based move, not an abandonment move. That was actually like he knew he couldn't be the man that I deserved, and he was actually going to step out so the universe could bring me somebody else that could step in. And that was the most loving thing he could have done at the time. I spent half my life thinking he had abandoned me and I couldn't trust men, and it just isn't real. It's not actually real.
That is
So that's what I would
the
tell him.
most selfless answer I've ever heard, that you took the time to say that. I mean, you literally just made something good for someone else. You're amazing. I
Oh, thank you.
loved having you on today.
The
So
interview
thank
is all about the questions. You
you.
did the most beautiful questions I've ever experienced in one of these kind of interviews. So I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you. So please, so everyone knows, how do we stay in touch with you or follow you or anything?
Yes. So I offer free breakthrough sessions. So if you want to talk about any of the things I talked about, you can go on my nataliesusi.com and click on that button and fill out your name. Otherwise, you can find me on Instagram under the same name, Natalie Susi. I do a running spiritual story, on my story 24/7 of positive quotes and affirmations and things that can brighten your day.
I love it. We're all
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalie, for being here and really sharing all that amazing stuff with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Hey, guys, thanks so much for checking out another episode of In Your Mind. Please tell me that you're in love with Natalie Susi as much as I did. Seriously, the skills she just taught us, life-changing. Thank you, Natalie, for being here. But what we need is your help. So please subscribe, share, help us get the word out there, because people need to be seeing this show. We cannot wait for you to see who's in next week, but you have to tune in to find out. So we'll see you then.